Hello everybody, Fallacy Insomnia here with another video. This video will be a bit different than my other ones. I want to talk about Oakensoul here in this video. So I played the game for about 8 years, primarily in PvP, and I love helping new players understand PvP, getting used to PvP, and learning the fundamentals. Now, one of the things with Oakensoul though, that you usually see, it is usually used by newer or more inexperienced players. And more often than not, it's suggested to them by other players or by ESO content creators. Maybe some of them will say Oakensoul is very great for PvP, or it's usable in PvP, maybe not too great, but it's usable. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Now, Oakensoul has its uses in PvP that are very niche. Now, we're going to get into that, but first, let's talk about what exactly Oakensoul is. So, for those that have been living under a rock, Oakensoul is a mythic that gives you a wide variety of buffs, ones that buff healing, recovery, damage, ultimate gain, etc. A lot of things, right? At the cost of only having one skill bar. So you usually have 10 skills and 2 ultimates. Now you only have 1 ultimate and 5 skills. Now on paper it might not seem too bad with all the buffs that you see on the screen, but it severely affects your ability to actually be functional in PvP. Now, before I really get into it, I want to get into like what you can do with Oakensoul. So a good combination with Oakensoul is a werewolf build. So werewolves by default only have 5 skills. They don't have 10 like most classes do. So werewolves only have 5 skills. Now, you don't really see any of the penalties that Oakensoul would normally give. Since you can't swap bars, you're not really losing anything too much. And because of a change Werewolf got a couple patches ago, they no longer get guaranteed major savagery, so they can lose a possible 10% crit chance. Now, with Oakensoul, you get major savagery. On top of that, you do get minor mending, minor berserk, minor courage, and minor protection. So they all go pretty well with a werewolf build, because all those things are going to be beneficial. And if you guys are interested, there is a werewolf build on the channel that uses Oakensoul. So if you guys are interested in checking it out, feel free on the channel. But the next thing that Oakensoul goes well with is a ganker. Since Oakensoul is primarily all buffs, such as minor berserk, minor courage, major brutality, major savagery, you don't have to worry about pre-buffing before you go and gank someone. And since most gankers typically only use 1 to 2 damaging abilities, it makes sense why you would use Oakensoul with it. Since you don't have to spend 10 seconds right before you hit somebody, and it would possibly mess up your gank. So let's get into the reason why Oakensoul is bad for PvP in general, besides the niches. So right here I have a typical Magic Templar build paired with Oakensoul. So you have Deadly Strike, Rallying Cry, Oakensoul, and then Barren Thirst just for the duo recovery there. Now, with that, we have the skills. We have Elisus for the Major Breach, which if we remember, Major Breach is about 10% damage increase. Radiant Glory, which is your execute, will give you a small heal. Purifying Light, it's your combo ability, copies all the damage that you do to the person, deals it again, and it gives a small heal. Puncturing Sweep, your spam bolt, gives a small heal. And then the second to last skill is the Healing Soul Scribing skill. So Burst Heal with Templar Mastery on it, and then Major Vitality. And then we have Dawnbreaker as the ultimate. So the issue here is you have very little heals or any form of damage mitigation. You have everything in your offensive kit to deal damage. You will have your CC with your Dawnbreaker. Now that's one of the downsides of Oakensoul, is you don't have the luxury of running your own CC like Javelin or Toppling Charge or something. You have to run Dawnbreaker just so you can buy bar space here. So with that being said, you run into the issue of having no heals. So this is the example of what a duel would typically go on a build like this with Oakensoul. So in this clip here, you're going to be seeing me fight a Dragonite with Pyre Brand, Kind's Marchers, and Battle Argon in Malakath. So now, even though you do have, minor protection, minor mending, and even major vitality through your burst heal, just having one burst heal on your bar simply is not enough. Now, you will see you are going to run out of mag really fast just only using one burst heal, because burst heals are around 4,200 to 4,300 max mag. So you're going to tap yourself out really fast, and then you're eventually just going to fall. Now, if you take anything off your bar, you're going to lose a lot of your kill potential originally. But if you run a generic Templar build like I have here, so I have 5-piece Deadly Strike, 5-piece Rallying Cry, 1-piece Trainee, 2-piece Ballarg, and a Ring of Market Majesty. So it's mostly light and medium here, with infused and a mix of Bloodthirsty on the jewelry. But with this here, we have Channeled Focus, Extended Ritual, Healing Soul, Living Dark, and Rapid Regeneration. So almost all of these except the Healing Soul will give us a heal over time. But it's important to remember, with Major Vitality from the Healing Soul and our Templar passive that will give us Minor Mending together with Channeled Focus, it will give us a heal of 1053 over one period of a second, and then 749 per second for Extended Ritual, which it does heal you once every 2 seconds, but if you have it, it's approximately 749. Living Dark, 1,282, and then Rapid Regen, which is 1,207, which would end us with 4,291 healing per second, which in PvP adds roughly like an okay burst heal. Now, that by itself can out-tank 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 dots depending on what they are, right? With Oakensoul, you cannot do this, which is why you are going to have less damage overall, because most Oakensoul builds, you can't have a full monster set, right? And Ballarg obviously is going to be the one that's going to do the most damage. You're not going to be able to have that, and you're not going to be able to survive. So if you look at the upcoming clip here, what we have is the same DK with Pirate Brand, Kind's Marchers, Malakath, and Ballarg. So now, if you look here on the back bar, we have all the heals over time, and we are not taking any amount of damage here compared to what we previously were on the Oakensoul setup. You can just sit here all day. Now, with an Oakensoul spec, you obviously can't do this, and this is the fundamental issue with Oakensoul. You are either too tanky and you have no damage, or you have a lot of damage and you just die instantly, right? This is why Oakensoul is not good for PvP. So one of the last things I want to touch on here with Oakensoul is it's not just a Templar problem, but it's an every class problem. So I created a visual here to show it. So each class here, I created a skill bar on what I would run if I had to run Oakensoul. So here, if we look at Dragon Knight, it lacks heals, right? You have Coagulating Blood, solid burst heal, and then you have Shattering Rocks, which is a small burst heal that's a stun. It's good, but you have still no heals over time. No Vigor, no Cinder Storm. You're not going to be able to survive off that, because the average burst heal is going to be 4,000 to 4,300 cost. If you spam that 3-4 times on top of your regular abilities, you're going to top yourself out very fast. And then you also run into the issue of dot pressure on Dragon Knight. So you have no Venomous Claw, no Burning Embers, no Volatile Armor, no weapon class dots, no nothing you can put on for it because you don't have room for it. And even if you want to go to the burst route with Fiery Contingency or a Deep Inhale, you can't put that on either. So your damage is going to be significantly lower. And then you don't have a snare removal, no race against time, no forward momentum, you're going to be bogged down. And then no corrosive armor, right? Corrosive armor speaks for itself, makes you very tanky, and you can kill just about anything with it. And since it's Oakensoul, you can't run 2 ultimates. So that's the issue that you run into there. So next we have Warden. Now we have Wrecking Blow, Executioner, Deep Fissure, Polar Winds, Resolving Vigor, and Dawnbreaker Smiting. Relatively okay setup, but you have no cleanse like you would on a normal setup. You would have Betting Etch. The nice thing about Betting Etch is you can spam it since it doesn't cost you anything. It removes one thing off you and gives you a small heal. You can't do that. Now you have no snare removal or Major Expedition. Since you don't have Bird of Prey on like you would on most builds, you won't get that bonus. Plus, you lose a little bit of crit damage from the Animal Companion's passive by not having it on the bar. And you don't get access to almost all your green balance passives. Since you have no green bounce abilities on, you won't get them. The only one you get is the one that gives you minor toughness. You won't get the one that gives you major mending, which is huge, which is where you would usually run leeching vines or living trellis, depending on the morph you want to go with. And one of the last important things is you don't have great healing still. You have Polar Winds. Polar Winds is a good heal, but it's health based. So you would need to either use a scribing skill or build up your HP in order to use it. Then you have Vigor. On this setup, I would like to have one extra heal to actually make it viable, but it's at least better than the DK route there. Now, the last thing is you don't have Northern Storm. Northern Storm is one of the strongest ultimates in the game. A lot of damage, damage mitigation, and increase in weapon spell damage. Now, you can't run it because it's going to cost too much, and if you're running an Oakensoul build, you want to have at least your main ultimate be the lowest costing in case of an emergency. So Sorcerer is a little interesting here. So we have Crushing Shock, Haunted Curse, Hardened Ward, Streak, Crystal Fragments, and Power Overload. So to start, you don't have a source of major breach. Now, you can swap out Crushing Shock if you want for the scribing skill that will apply major breach and can be used as a damage spammable. Now, that is a possible route you can go there. But the other issue that you're going to run into is you have no dark conversion or dark deal. If you can't control your resources like you would on a normal Sorc build with that, then you're going to be building a lot more into recovery. More into recovery means you're going to have less damage, or even if you want to, sacrifice some of your recovery for defense, resistance, or damage mitigation, depending on how you want to go about it. Either way, you're going to lose extra healing from the ability and extra sustain, which equals out to damage mitigation or damage depending on how you run your build. And we don't have Mage's Wrath on this build. There's no Execute. There's no reliable burst heal since we don't have Dark Exchange. You can't run Twilight. You can't even put a Crit Surge on for like at least a little bit of a heal. So you're going to run into that problem. The only heal you really have on this build is Hardened Ward, and it already got nerfed by 10% about 2 patches ago. So you're going to run into that issue. And the one thing that makes Sorc really OP is the fact that they can basically use 2 ultimates at once. So when you pop your Overload on a 2-bar setup on your back bar, and then you have Dawnbreaker on your front bar, you can launch an Overload into a Dawnbreaker, typically. And since you're running Oakensoul, you won't be able to do that. And on top of that, you're going to run into a lot of issues in terms of damage, because you can't put Mage Light on either for extra max mag or Bound Aegis or anything like that. So your ward's going to be lacking, your damages is going to be lacking, and your sustain is going to be lacking. So up next we have Nightblade. To start, we have Resolving Vigor, our heal over time, Surprise Attack, our main damage spammable. We have Healthy Offering, our main burst heal, Shadowy Disguise, which is our invis, Merciless Resolve, which is our big damage ability, and then we have Incap for our ult. So here we have no major breach. We can't run Piercing Mark, that is on Nightblade. We can't run Elisus for it either. We don't have bar space because everything is crucial already as it is. Now, you have no siphoning attacks, which is usually when you take away your own HP and you get a lot of mag and stand back, which now means you are going to have to get your resources elsewhere, which means you're going to have to take it off your jewelry, take weapon damage off, and put on more recovery, maybe change your Mundus from crit to recovery, change your food from Bewitched to Jewels of Misrule. Regardless, you're taking down your damage because you need to build more sustain into your build. And that's what happens when you run Oakensoul. Next, no major expedition and no major evasion. So Refreshing Pass is really good because it gives you recovery, it gives you a heal, and major expedition, and it gives this all to your group. You have Blur, major evasion, 20% less damage from AoEs, very strong. Depending on which morph you get, it turns into a snare removal, mono resolve, free roll dodge, a bunch of stuff there. This is what you can't put on your build because you need a burst heal and at least a heal over time to match it, if not more. And then you need your main damage spammable, Merciless Resolve, and then what is a Nightblade build without Invis? So next, you have no Execute. With no Execute, it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely helpful on Nightblade. Gap Closer, it is really nice to be able to keep up with the people that you're fighting, especially if they're running away. But not having the choice here does hurt a lot, and this is something that you can't do if you have Oakensoul on. So next we have Necromancer. So starting we have Bloody and Blast Bones as our damaging ability. We have Spirit Guardian, a small hero over time with 10% damage mitigation. Wrecking Blow is our main damage spammable. Resistant Flesh is our main burst here. Executioner as our execute, and Dawnbreaker is fighting for our ult. So to start, just like the other classes, we lack heals. You have a burst heal and then a small heal over time. That won't be enough there. It heals you even less than Vigor with Spirit Guardian. So you're going to run into the same issue that you saw on the Templar clip, tapping yourself out of resources because you're spamming your burst heal because it's not supposed to be spammed. You're supposed to use heals over time to complement it. Then you don't get to take advantage of the corpses that you have as a necromancer. So say, for example, one of the passes is you get bonus ultimate whenever you siphon a corpse. And some of your abilities, maybe Mortal Coil, which is a really good healing ability that doesn't cost anything, and gives you extra healing, and on top of that gives you mag and stand back. You won't be able to use that because you don't have the bar space for it. And then you have an overall low damage combo without using procs. Since running Oakensoul hampers your ability to run, let's say, 2 arena weapons, it's gonna impact it a little bit. Since some necromancers will run maybe like a Vadish or a Nice Staff or a Black Rose dual wield sometimes on the back bar, it lowers what you can do and your overall damage output, since it lowers your overall possible build combination since you can't back bar. And Necromancer has always been lacking in the damage department. Then our last big thing here is lack of CC. So Necromancer has their own CC. It has the totem. You can use the scribing skill. You can use Turn Evil from Fighter skill. There's a lot of CCs you can use. But because you don't have the bar space for them, you have to use Dawnbreaker as your CC, which obviously you do not want to use an ultimate as your main form of CC because it will get in the way of maybe staying alive. If you have like Turn Evil, you can pop it right before you're about to die in a group and it can be the difference between life and death. Or maybe just that small CC is just enough to kill someone who's already weak. Lastly, we have the Arcanist. So we have Rendering Slashes, which is a damaging ability over time. We have Impervious Rune Ward, Exhausting Fate Carver, Rune of the Color of this Pool, CC. That's our stun. And then we have Evolving Runement and Dawnbreaker for our ult. So to start, we lack heals. Impervious Rune Ward gives you a small heal if you have Cruxes active. And then we have Evolving Runement, which is our burst heal, which, just like all the other setups, is just not enough. You need extra heal over time. We don't have that here on the build. Especially with Evolving Runement, it has a slight delay. It's not instant like other ones. And then Impervious Rune Ward, the heal is so minimum you don't even notice it majority of the time, unless you have all your Cruxes active, which that's going to be situational. Next, you don't have a lot of damage without your Fate Carver. So a lot of Arcanists, and it is known, Arcanists don't have a lot of damaging abilities on their own. They rely on a lot of procs, maybe Master's Dual Wield, Vadish Nice Staff, Mazalak, there's a lot of things. So if you don't have the ability to put even a little bit more damaging abilities on here or any more dots, you are going to suffer a little bit. And especially if you can't back bar, let's say like a Vadish Nice Staff, it will hurt your build dramatically, especially on an Arcanist. And Fate Carver by itself isn't even a great spammable or damaging ability in PvP because it's really hard to hit. So you're forcing yourself to run this here just because a lot of the other setups would require more skills in order for it to work effectively. Next, you have no mobility, no snare removal. There's no risk against time here, no forward momentum, nothing that you can use here. You can't even use the escape on Arcanist since you don't have bar space for it. Lastly, you miss a lot of damaging skills like Scholarship, which basically gives you free proc damage whenever you deal damage over a certain period of time. And then Rune Blades, which isn't a bad damaging ability, but you just can't put it on your bar. You just have too much you're willing to sacrifice here. So this just shows the issues that you have with Oakensoul on every class. Every class with Oakensoul in PvP is ineffective, and that's why you should not run Oakensoul. But instead, I have something that you should run, especially if you are a newer player. So if you followed the channel for a little bit, then you would know that I actually ran this mythic already a couple times on some of my build videos. So this is still hands down, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best PvP mythic in the whole game. And there's a few reasons for it. Like I'll recap. So it's on par with Clever Alchemist and New Moon Acolyte put together in terms of weapon and spell damage. The weapon spell damage you get is still higher with the Torque of the Last Alien King than those two sets put together based off pure weapon spell damage. Next, you have Wretched Vitality for the 500 mag and stam recovery. Now, you will technically get 19 magic and stamina recovery more with Wretched Vitality, but the fact that you're still getting all of this in one mythic outclasses that any day. Then you have set like a Buffer of the Swift, where you get 10% damage mitigation and a little bit of armor. Basically, the armor makes up for the other 5% that you're not getting from it. So it's close to about 15% damage mitigation. So we're talking about 4 different 5-piece sets here coming together to make a mythic, but you are able to put the mythic on and get all those buffs. That's insane. And one of the nice things about this is, outside just getting the mythic, you don't have to grind for any other 5-piece sets, and Torque is so customizable. If you want, you can run 7 heavy, put Flare on your back bar for major protection, Temporal Guard on your back bar, and have 30% damage mitigation, have a lot of damage still with the weapon spell damage, and not have to worry about recovery. If you want to run Jewels of Misrule and have over 2k recovery and never have to worry about resources again, and you can do that. There's so many different ways you can customize this. You can run 7 light, be fairly squishy, but still you're not one-shottable, but be able to nuke everything around you. There's just so many different ways you can customize this mythic. It's crazy. And when it comes to new players, it's better if they run this over Oakensoul, because you still learn the fundamentals of how to play the game, because bar swapping is one of the hardest things to understand in PvP, and you don't learn that if you only use Oakensoul. You have to learn that by using a setup like this. I recommend this mythic to every new player that I talk to all the time. So I really hope you'll give it consideration. Hopefully, at least I convinced you not to run Oakensoul in PvP, and if you can share that with your friends too, that would be wonderful, because I love playing PvP and I love seeing people succeed. So let me know down in the comments below if you think I am correct on this, if you think I'm partially correct, or if I'm completely wrong. But regardless of that, this is Fallacy Insomnia. You guys have a very great day.